Fatelessness, a Nobel Prize-winning autobiographical novel by Hungarian author Imre Kertész, takes readers through the harrowing experiences of the protagonist György Köves during the Holocaust. While the character is a fictionalized representation of the author himself, the story is based on Kertész's own first-hand accounts. Set in Budapest, Hungary, the narrative unfolds as György, a young Jewish boy of around 14 years old, leads a modest life with his father. The turning point comes when György's father is announced to be sent to a labor camp. On his last day with his father, György is excused from school to spend precious time together at their shop. It is during this day that the weight of the situation begins to sink in as György witnesses his father handing over control of the shop to his assistant, Mr. Suto. 2 months later, György's family receives news that, compared to others of Jewish descent, his father has been assigned to a relatively privileged position at the Shell gas petroleum refinery. Mr. Suto fulfills his promise and continues to support György's father by providing food and rations. Despite the deteriorating conditions for Jews in Budapest, György's family holds on to hope, anticipating liberation from the Nazis by the Allied forces before the situation worsens. However, one fateful day on the bus to work, the police stop the vehicle and demand identification papers from all passengers. Confident in his legal residency, György, though Jewish, expects to be exempt from detention. Yet, as he and several others are forced off the bus, he notices a group of familiar Jewish schoolmates instructed by the officers to hide while the papers are being examined, thus concealing their imminent detention. Awaiting further orders, the group is eventually transported to a suffocating and overcrowded customs house, where their plight takes a darker turn. As the afternoon wears on, the young prisoners are informed that they must present their papers to a higher authority and are marched through the streets under the watchful eye of a soldier dressed in a tight-fitting uniform, clutching a riding crop. György overhears the soldier remark that the boys should remain in the stables where they supposedly belong. It is only when György realizes he won't be returning home for dinner that he grasps the gravity of the situation. The next chapter finds György aboard a crowded train, battling an unbearable thirst. The boys engage in discussions about how long one can survive without water, sharing survival tips for enduring dehydration, such as avoiding sweat and abstaining from meat. The narrative then flashes back to depict how György and the others ended up on the train. In the previous location, where a man with a riding crop glared at them and issued threats, György and the rest are asked if they are willing to work. After some deliberation, György concludes that agreeing to work is the wisest choice, as he believes that hard work is valued in German culture. The narrative shifts forward again to the train, which has arrived at its destination. As György disembarks, he takes note of the sign outside the camp that reads Auschwitz-Birkenau. The boys are separated into 2 groups, the physically fit and the unfit. György instinctively understands that his survival hinges on being sorted into the fit group, so he inflates his chest during inspection and lies about his age, following the suggestion of another prisoner who advises him to present himself as no younger than 16. Fortunately, the plan succeeds, and György is deemed fit. Day by day, György adapts to life in Auschwitz as best he can, employing small strategies he hopes will prolong his survival. For instance, he always positions himself at the back of the line when queuing for soup, since the meager broth, which barely sustains him, tends to be slightly thicker at the bottom of the vats. He also practices rationing the small amount of bread they receive at night, saving it for the morning to gain extra strength for the arduous task of moving concrete throughout the day. The pervasive smell of the crematorium, where the Nazis incinerate those they have murdered or who have succumbed to disease, exhaustion, or starvation, constantly reminds György of the fate that awaits him if he gives up on survival. Eventually, György is transferred to the Buchenwald concentration camp, and later, to a camp in Zeitz. However, he soon realizes that no matter what he does to endure, his body is betraying him. Carrying a bag of concrete that once posed little challenge now inflicts intense agony with every step. Gradually, his fellow prisoners have to lift him off the damp ground every morning during roll call. When a red, pus-filled welt forms on his knee and he refuses to seek medical attention, his fellow prisoners take it upon themselves to transport him to the hospital area. There, György witnesses even greater levels of human suffering than he had seen before. His fellow patients writhe in pain from various ailments, and he is particularly struck by those who have lost toes due to the freezing weather. The entire unit is infested with fleas and lice, swarming around and infesting Győry's festering wounds. Once it becomes evident to the doctors and guards that Győry is too ill to work, he is sent back to Buchenwald on a train, fully expecting to meet his demise there. The suffering has pushed Győry to the point where he feels completely disconnected from his body, perhaps as a physiological coping mechanism to deal with the excruciating pain. His only wish is that his death will not be too agonizing. However, upon arriving at Buchenwald, he experiences a faint glimmer of hope, deciding that he wants to prolong his existence in this beautiful concentration camp for a little while longer. The new hospital where Győry is taken is a stark contrast to the previous horrors he had endured. He finds himself treated with a semblance of kindness by the SS officers, although he suspects there may be ulterior motives behind their actions, possibly grooming him for unimaginable torture experiments. Thankfully, as Győry gradually recovers, the camp is liberated by Allied forces, granting him his freedom. Returning to Hungary, Győry discovers that he is not regarded as a hero or even as a survivor, but rather as a mere curiosity. Journalists and others approach him, seeking his impressions of the camp, but his attempts to convey the indescribable terror and suffering fall short of leaving an impact. Győry attempts to locate one of his closest friends from the camp, Bandy Citram, but is left in uncertainty regarding his friend's fate. After enduring a year in concentration camps, Győry finds himself unable to fully engage in the moral indignation surrounding his ordeal because, to him, it was simply a new reality he had to accept in order to survive, to be a good prisoner, as Kertész eloquently expresses. This is where the true essence of fatelessness emerges, both in the title and in its profound significance. What sets Győry apart as fateless is his minimal identification with Judaism until he is forced to wear the yellow star. When his uncle speaks of the shared Jewish fate that Győry now finds himself in, it fails to resonate with him. Throughout his time in the concentration camps, Győry's attempts at survival eventually prove futile. Ultimately, he survives not because he consciously wills it, but due to the whims of random timing, with his fate completely out of his hands. This powerful and unforgettable theme resonates at the core of this remarkable and impactful book. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.